Welcome to the Send More Offers Real Estate Show with Brandon Barnes, showing you how to do wholesaling deals consistently without having to go on seller appointments. Learn the key tips and strategies that Brandon's students use to find deeply discounted properties that are pennies on the dollar, all while avoiding wear and tear on their vehicle, body, and freedom. Whether you're looking for your first deal or your next deal, it's time to send more offers with your host, Brandon Barnes.
What's going on, Chris?
Yo, my guy, what's going on, man? It's good to see you, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, bro, it's been a minute. Everything that you got going on, man, is just really impressive with the U Charged Up U University. Tell me about that. Like, what do you have kind of as the different, programs that you're working through right now?
Yeah, man, it's pretty crazy, man. When I started the U, I came from a place of, at the time, having been in the business for 10 years, buying different programs myself and, absorbing different type of education. And one thing that I realized, I'm like, man, like everybody has a course, there's so many courses out here, but this business is so detailed, can somebody truly really learn just from a course and a Facebook group and 5-10 minute videos and different
Right.
modules. And I just didn't feel like that really made sense or could really get people the information they needed. So, I ended up deciding to create a community, a membership platform, that has a course and all these different things, man, 200 plus hours of videos. We got a women's group, men's group, morning meetup call, all these different things, man. So it's just really cool to support people getting into wholesaling, wholesaling transformed my life. It's how I got my start in real estate. It's something I still continue to do very much to this day.
Yeah.
But, all the different things that I've done, flipping houses, renovating houses, rentals, apartments, all that foundationally came from wholesaling.
Yeah. Well, look, let's go back to that. Like, kind of getting into the real estate investing business, right? I mean, most people start wholesaling. I like to call it the cornerstone of all real estate. How were
Right.
you able to like quickly go from doing deals to like really building a business?
Yeah. So that's a great question, man. And I think it's really relevant to the times that we're in right now. So, I started in 2008, really in the midst
Man.
of a recession, kind of starting to take place, kind of where we're at almost right now in
Mm.
some ways. And, was wholesaling and had some traction with that. But, I think that this business of real estate is more than anything is about knowing how to pivot, knowing
Mm.
how and when to pivot, being able to see cycles in advance of when they shift, and planning and preparation, is always important. So for me, I remember seeing that, I think it was 2010, right? I'm seeing where at the time they had the $6,500 first time homebuyer tax credit. All right.
Mm.
And so the government is saying literally, hey, we'll give you a tax credit. We'll give you $6,500 if you buy a house.
Mm.
And I was wholesaling at the time, and I just remember being like, wait, what? So the government's going to pay people to buy a home?
That's
And so
wild.
I quickly saw that and I made a shift. I looked at it and I said, okay, so this credits for first time home buyers. What's the average price for a first time home in my area, which at the time was around, I think, 140, 150,000.
Mm.
And so I started going and taking some of the deals that came in and I started flipping those deals. So then I started flipping those deals, creating opportunities out of that. And then everything, man, really just kind of started, kind of transitioning from there. And I've just kind of over the years, I've always used my pivot foot. I've always paid attention, saw how things were working out, saw what was coming, and just had that, I guess, that internal awareness of, okay, like there's a shift that will take place, just given data, just given what's happening in the market. Let me be ahead of that. I think a lot of times, man, people just tend to be so reactive.
Mm.
We wait till things have changed to then say, oh, I need to change now because things have already changed. I look at it from a different lens. I want to be ahead of all of that. I want to make those changes and those shifts in advance because that's how you kind of really truly capture that opportunity. So for me, 2010 hit. I was doing a lot of flips. I think that year I did around 35 flips or something like that year,
Mm.
and took very great advantage of the. Yeah, so it's funny, man. So first I'm doing wholesaling and flipping houses, but then I started flipping a lot of houses, right? First time home buyer tax credit. And then I started riding that into other opportunities when it kind of came to real estate, man.
Got it. Got it. Nah, that's dope. And so when you say flips, like, is that aside from the wholesale deals that you were doing at the time?
right? And as you know, now you're dealing. I'm a new business owner. I'm dealing with contractors. I'm dealing with how to pay people.
Mm,
I'm having to try to hire folks. And so I started shifting really hard into fixing and flipping.
mm,
I stopped wholesaling at the time. We still were doing direct to seller marketing to find the deals that we wanted. But I mean, honestly, Brandon, that's one of my biggest mistakes, man. One of my biggest mistakes was that I stopped
mm.
wholesaling at that time. And I didn't pick it back up, you know, until 2016,
Wow.
right when I started wholesaling again. So there was a 6 year gap where we were using wholesaling principles, right? So we were doing direct to seller marketing, we were sourcing our own deals, we had VAs, we had a sales team, but it was just for me to buy my own
Yeah.
properties. And then it got to a point where I started realizing I had cash flow issues in 2017, and I realized, wait, we've got all these leads coming in that I'm cherry picking on, but we could be monetizing these and selling them to other people. And that's how I kind of
Yeah.
navigated back
I
into
mean,
wholesaling.
that's an amazing journey, the fact that you were able to have that opportunity for one to get into flipping, but still doing the direct to seller marketing. Was any of this with a mentor? Did somebody show you the way? You know, how did you kind of get the foundation and the principles for this?
Man, I'm laughing, man, because I preach coaching, I preach mentorship. Obviously, I coach a lot of people, and I didn't, man. I it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of things that could have been avoided with proper guidance, with proper coaching. But I was young at the time, and I'm 36. I turned 36 in 2 weeks. I'm 36 now. I
Yeah.
was young and bullish. You know, I thought I knew everything. I didn't have any real resources when I started out. So I'm learning in bigger pockets and, different things online. But, I couldn't get a mentor, man. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have a mentor. It was just really being a student of the game, and I didn't want to have to do it that way. It was just, I don't think people know, Brandon, but back then, I'm older now, right? So I can say back then. So back then, right? Like, if you wanted coaching, you needed at least $5,000, right? Like, to get some good coaching in
Yeah.
2010, you needed some money. Like, there weren't any real $1,000 coaching programs or $500 coaching programs and stuff like that, man. Like, you had to spend some real money to get
Yeah.
coaching. I just didn't have it. And so I just kind of got into that mode of, I'm going to learn as I go. I'm not going to be too aggressive. So I'm not going to take extreme risk. I want to be in business for a long time. So let me kind of be conservative and create a plan that kind of really matches that. And for me, that was, fixing and flipping houses. I started building houses and some stuff like that, man. But if I could go back, man, I wish I could get a mentor at that point, because I could have made way more money than I ended up making, for sure.
That's wild, bro. Like, cause was YouTube even popping
Nah, so
like that? Like, was there?
so YouTube, that wasn't even a thing. These Facebook groups were just kind of starting to kind of come around at that point in time, but there wasn't an abundance of
Wow.
information out there. Everything really came out of bigger pockets, man. Like, if you wanted free game, free information, you had to be like I was. I'd be on the forums of bigger
Mm,
pockets, literally on there all the time, just reading and reading and reading. But there's something to that, though, right? Like, and I talk about this to my students a lot. What I was doing at that time, even though the information I was absorbing didn't all necessarily apply to me, by reading about it, I was literally
yeah.
self-teaching. So that when I started to experience those same things or run into those same issues or hurdles in the business, I had a frame of reference back to something I previously saw on bigger pockets or previously saw in a conversation, and I would know how to kind of handle it at that point in time, man. So for me personally, bigger pockets was my mentor. I'll put it that way. How about that?
That's wild. Yeah, bro. I similarly preach kind of how what I think excelled my learning is when I got started in 2016. It was from a buddy that gave me access to the Wholesaling Inc. course, but I was telling my wife at the time, the coach is gonna know my name at some point. But and that's why I went on and purchased the course after the fact, because I wanted to be a part of the community. So like that speaks to the
Yeah.
community aspects, and so many friends and colleagues I met through that. But one of the things that I did very early on was go back and listen to all the old coaching recordings, because I felt like if I could hear other people's questions and how the coach answered it, then that would,
Right.
set me up if I had a similar issue. So there's definitely power in really being a student in the game. And I want to get to kind of what your business looks like now and like what the nuts and bolts of everything are. But how did you? What was the first even introduction to wholesaling or bigger pockets? Like, what sparked the interest out the gate?
so, I'm laughing at this question because some people know this story, but I used
Oh
to
yeah,
buy and sell
me
sneakers. I
too.
was a sneakerhead, right? In high school, early college, I used to. That's what I did. I would flip sneakers to make money. And so I was on this website,
Yep.
man. Shout out to Nike Talks. I was on this website. It was a forum
Yeah.
very similar to Bigger Pockets, but for sneakers. And I would be on this forum all day, every day, talking about sneakers and different things. So there's this guy, we're doing a local DMV meetup. All right. And there's this guy, shout out to my guy Vernon Vaughn. And so a lot of people will know who he is. So he is a sneakerhead also. And he's in the group and I see him posting and in his like, profile signature or whatever, he
Uh-huh.
has that he's a wholesaler. All right. And I don't even know
Yeah.
what wholesaling is at that point, by the way. But I go click on the website. I click on the website, and this guy's got a check on his website for $34,000. And then he's wholesaling a house
Oh
and giving
wow.
away a Jaguar
Wow.
to the buyer. And so I'm like, yo, what is this? I'm like, hold up, how's this dude got
Right.
34,000? I thought he just collects sneakers. So I sent him a private message. We started kind of exchanging messages back and forth. By that time on my end, at that point I was bird dogging, right? So like, yeah, I'm getting like $250 an address. He starts telling me about wholesale, and I started researching into it. That's kind of how I came upon Bigger Pockets. He starts telling me about wholesale, and I started looking into it a
That's
bit.
so
I'm like,
real.
whoa. I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, so he made 34
Mm.
grand and he never even bought the house. He didn't do any repairs.
Right.
I need to get active in this, right? And so that's kind of really for me what started the process of figuring out what wholesaling is, how it functions, and how to put a wholesale business together.
Yeah. Right place, right time. I think it was meant to be. Um, when you got into like the flipping aspect, did you bring on any team members? Did you have a VA? Did you have an admin? Anybody to support you with that?
Yeah, so good question. So, when I first got started, fixing and flipping houses, my team was kind of really basic, right? Like what I knew that I needed just from kind of paying attention to people around me, I knew I needed a solid contractor and what I call, or what we
Mm,
call in the business, a whole house renovator. So not somebody that just did drywall, just did paint, or just did this, just did that. Somebody that could themselves renovate an entire house, or they could manage the team of people that could do that. But they weren't what we would call a GC.
yeah.
They were just a jack of all trades, so to speak. And so that was the first person I put on my team. I was doing mostly cosmetic renovations at the time, but I knew I needed somebody that could be, my eyes and ears, a voice of reason, could be a voice of experience. So I went out and found somebody that was a whole house renovator. So it was me, had a whole house renovator, and then I had an admin that helped me with the paperwork, the billing. You're cutting checks every Fridays.
Right.
Contractors, you know how contractors are, Brandon. They nail something in the wall, they finish
Exactly.
that very second, right? Hey, where's the check? And I was too naive at the time. I didn't know enough to know, hey, I need to tell them the payment
Mm,
schedule. I need to tell them when I'm going to cut a check, right? So I'm running all over the place doing all these different things. And so as things started to progress, I started adding on to the construction team. That was really big for me. We were doing a lot of properties at that time. So I built out a crew of about 6 guys who did different types of work, but they were all majority whole house renovators. They could all individually renovate an entire house. They could all do light electrical, light plumbing, drywall work, painting, framing, all these different things. And so I built this crew of 6, and we started rotating through houses with
mm,
a really, really strong velocity. At that time, I was paying those guys on salary,
right.
which was pretty expensive, right? But I was paying those guys on salary, and then we started to kind of run into some issues with that, and we had to make a shift in the business model, which again, kind of to my point, right? You reach these points of having to pivot. So that was another pivot moment for me, in building that team, understanding what the team really kind of needed to look like as
Yeah.
well.
And look, I know we want to talk about like the wholesale aspect of it, but I'm asking kind of these questions for a reason. I'm curious now, were you able to use, any of that team, any of that knowledge to go on and become like a better wholesaler? Or when you decided to actually start to do wholesale deals, did it come easier? Were you able to negotiate better spreads?
Yeah, for sure. So what it did for me by building out the team in the way that I did was I ended up having
Mhm.
construction experience by happenstance, right? By building out this team and managing that team myself, I'm on job sites daily. I'm going to, Lowe's, Home Depot, all these different things on a daily basis. So I'm starting to understand the material. I'm starting to understand who the other cash buyers are in the area. Who are the players? Who's involved in these types of deals actually
Mhm.
taking place? Who are the lenders, right? Having conversation with hard money lenders and hey, who are your top borrowers? Who are your top flippers? Who are your top people that borrow money from you, and making sure I prioritize those types of people, right? And having conversations and doing business with. But the part of the team that I actually ended up keeping, ironically, was the sales team that I started to build out. So again, I was wholesaling, but not to other people. I was essentially wholesaling to myself. I was finding my own deal flow for all those years. And so we had started building VAs, we started building the sales process. And so in the midst of doing that, when I got back into wholesaling in 2016, it was really literally like a seamless transition. We literally decided one day, hey, why are we not wholesaling to other people? And the next day we were looking to wholesale to other people because we had already had kind of the foundation of everything in place and kind of set up.
That's dope. So from all that perspective, like, would you even suggest, or what would you tell somebody that either has interest in, fixing and flipping a house, or, maybe at a point when it may make sense for them? What do you tell some of the folks that you work with, like when that they should even consider rehabbing a property?
Yeah, so my students know that I'm pretty passionate about this question. I think we're in this climate where flipping houses
Mm,
has become like a fantasy for a lot of people. We remember the early 2000s, the rise of HGTV and Flip This House and just all these shows, right? Like that have overtaken the
right,
DIY
right,
network and like just every channel, right, has
right.
become about flipping houses. And so what's happened is the everyday person, like the guy that's, at Wells Fargo at his desk right now, he's sitting there thinking like, I could flip a house and make more money, right? And the harsh reality
Right.
is that's not how this works, right? Like in layman's terms, all right, you use real estate for one of two things,
Mm,
or but both if you're smart, right? Use it for active income or passive income. Okay, so look at this a little bit more simply. And this, I'm a really great example of this. I flipped hundreds and hundreds of houses, but if I wholesale them and I have no debt, I don't have to manage a lot of contractors. Maybe I'm perceiving that I'm making a smaller spread, but in reality, I'm actually not when you start to take a look at the actual time commitment, right? But I think what happens is I think people get into wholesaling and they immediately think that
mm,
the next step is flipping houses. And that's not true. The next step, once you start wholesaling successfully, the next step isn't to go flip houses. The next
mhm.
step is to go create the passive income. You've got active income already. So
Right.
why would you trade active income
That's
for
a
more
gem.
active income?
That's a gem.
I'm already wholesaling, right? Why would I go to try to now also flip a house?
Yeah.
That
That's a
that to
gem.
me makes no sense, right? What you really want to do is build a
Mhm.
wholesale business that's booming, right? That's producing a consistent flow of revenue for yourself. You got a cash bucket to work out of. That's giving you some active income, and then you start to transition that into passive income opportunities. Myself, I did it wrong. A lot of people do it wrong because I was like most people, right? I got into it, I started wholesaling, and then I immediately saw the opening with the tax credit. So what did I do? I just completely shifted into flipping houses. I ended up putting more work on myself, more burden on myself, fighting lawsuits and dealing with contractors and doing all these different things when
Right.
I could have literally just kept
Right.
wholesaling from the jump and creating type of active income and then pouring it into passive, man. So if I could literally leave people with anything, is there is no hierarchy anymore in real estate, right? Like you got guys wholesaling making 500,000 a month. I would challenge you to find a flipper that is making 500,000 a month flipping houses. That is extremely difficult to accomplish,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Big
You know what I
facts.
mean?
Big
Yeah.
facts. So at this point, are there any situations in which you do consider flipping? Like, or when's the last time you've actually done a
So
rehab?
I do rehabs right now, right? So we've got active rehab projects right now, but my business looks a lot different because now I understand it. So at one point, like I said, we had 6 contractors on staff, right, on payroll. I then transitioned into working with GCs. Then I started doing cost plus, and here's the facts. Here's what I realized, and I've done it everywhere over the last 13 years. I realized that all I needed
Mm,
to do was simply partner, right? That there was a guy out there that was doing 5 houses a year and he was renovating those houses and he was making good money and he liked to go to Lowe's, he liked to go to Home Depot, he liked to deal with contractors, he considered himself handy and liked to be on job sites. And I find those people now and I go to those people and I say, "Hey, Brandon, here's what I can do for you. You're doing 5 houses a year right now. I can double your volume. I'll provide the deal and I'll provide the money. All you got to do is manage the project, and I'm going to
love it.
share 30% of the profit with you." Well, the guy that's doing 5 flips a year, he's completely
Right.
open to that because that means more money for him. He's not a wholesaler, so he doesn't have any control of any deal flow for himself. Right? That's why he's only doing 5. It's not that he's not good at rehabbing. So I find people like that and I build relationships with them. And then I bring opportunities into the relationship. And then, I make 70%, they make 30%, but it alleviates me having to be on a job site, having to deal with a contractor, having to source material. So that shift for me in the last couple of years has been life changing, quite frankly, because it's given me a lot of my time back to use it for things that are going to be more beneficial to create that passive income.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Now, just to kind of get into the wholesale operation, right? So you got back into, hey, we're going to start wholesaling. You brought over your sales team, the folks that were already getting the deals that you were flipping. Now you're able to sell to others. Did you guys, I guess, were you still using the same main marketing channel? What was your favorite marketing channel at the time? And what were you guys using to find these
Yeah.
opportunities?
So I guess I'm an OG at this point. At one point we were going crazy on direct mail and all these different things. And so we had started cold calling and we were crushing it with cold calling, man. Like just literally crushing it. In 2017, we started doing mass texting and I don't know, you were probably texting in 2017. People see, Brandon, people know texting now. In 2017, man, texting was like, we used to call it the Draco, right? Like you could contact so many people, you could hit the whole block, all right, with one clip. We started doing that, man, and the texting became crazy. The cold calling became crazy. Then we implemented Ringless voicemail with that. We call that the 3-headed monster. We put all that in place. And once we got those 3 marketing channels, cold calling is by far my favorite to this day, right? By far my favorite to this day. But once we got those 3 marketing channels in place, like I said, that 3-headed monster, we were able to lower our cost of doing business, right? You know this, man. Like direct mail is expensive, right? And I think people don't know, but if you do direct mail, you got to do it in volume, right? To make money. So you got to spend a lot of money for it to work. So when we made that shift, man, that's when everything just really started to just rock and roll for us in a really, really strong way. 110%.
Yeah. So look, once you transition from rehabbing back to wholesaling, I'm assuming that you were really active in that day to day process. Now knowing that you're not so much involved in the day to day, like how did you make that transition?
Yeah. So to transition to kind of pull myself a bit out of the business, and I knew that was something I needed to do because I'd burnt out doing a lot of fix and flips and doing a lot of building houses and stuff like that. So I looked at it as, hey, what am I best at? Like if I take myself, all right, what is my true asset to the business? And that for me, that was really, really simple. It was sales, talking to people over the phone, closing people. That was my highest use. That was my best use to the business. And so I started to
Mhm.
build out the things around me that I didn't feel like I was doing well. Like I didn't feel like I was managing follow-ups as best that I should. Right. So I brought an
Mhm.
operations person in very early. That was one of my first hires, was an integrator, to have them come in and really kind of manage the paperwork shuffle, making sure that we were hitting the leads that we were supposed to hit. We didn't miss calendar appointments, made sure we call
Yeah.
sellers back. That was a very key hire for me. I think people often, man, when they go to outsource, they go to get themselves out of the business. I don't know why, but I think people are always looking to eliminate the things that drives revenue. So for me, it's simple, right? It's
Mm.
like, if talking to somebody on the phone and getting them under contract, that's the baseline for whether we make money or not, why
Mhm.
would I hand that to a VA? Right? Like that to me makes no sense, right? Like that's literally the gas that goes in the car. So we can have all these tools, we can have an office building, we can be doing all this stuff. Somebody's got to close to make money. And so I didn't eliminate closing in the beginning. I didn't really eliminate closing for many years. I wanted to be the person. I used VAs to set the call, right? And warm up the call. But that actual closing conversation, I wanted to take that because I knew that's how I could grow money into the business to be able to get to that next spot. So I went integrator first, right? Obviously, we built out VAs, for marketing for the sales team. But really, I think a
Right.
hidden gem that most people don't go look for is I got an admin VA, 350 an hour at the time.
Mhm.
I had him come in, sorting lists, doing skip tracing, uploading stuff to the dialer, managing our KPIs, just doing all these little tedious types of tasks that if I
Mhm.
could get them off of my plate, I'd be able to kind of get much further in the business. And then another thing that I did, man, was I implemented, a traction concept, which is a level 10 meeting, right? And that level
Mhm.
10 meeting is really a
Love those.
15-30 minute daily meeting where you're meeting as a team and we're going over, our daily rocks, right? Like we're going over the things we need as a team to accomplish on a daily basis. I think there's this misconception, at least I had it. I don't know if other people had it. I'm sure they did or do. But at the time, man, like 2018, when I started getting heavy into wholesaling again, I'm seeing all this stuff online and like this is at peak where people got 20, 30 sales reps and everybody's making 100,000 a month and everybody's doing
Right.
this and doing that. And I'm like, damn, like that's what I want to do. Right.
Right.
What I realized, because I chased that down for most of
Mhm.
2018. And
Mm.
by 2019, I realized like, oh wait, that must be content, right? Like that must be marketing, right? Like I think most people don't realize you really only need 3 sales reps to make 7
Nice.
figures, man.
Mhm.
Like you literally only really need 3 sales reps to make 7 figures. I think what most people don't understand is it's not about how many reps, it's not always about how many leads. You can give 2 people the exact same sets of leads. Whoever's got the better skill set when it comes to closing is going to win out. They're going to do more business.
Love it.
And so I started figuring out, wait, okay, I'm thinking I need 20 people, I need this, I need that. I really just need to get on the phone and dial in a process. And then
Mhm.
once you got a foundational process to how you do business, now you can start to really build upon that and scale from there. And so that's kind of the approach that I end up taking with it.
Love it. Love it. Just briefly, at this point, are you guys closing in person, closing virtually, and then what markets?
Yeah, man. So great question. So right now we majorly close over the phone. So for the last probably 6 years, almost everything we're doing is over the phone. There's some unique situations I think where we have to go out and take a look at the property or send somebody out, but that very rarely happens. Mostly you're going to do that when somebody's extremely motivated, right? When
Mhm.
somebody's like ready to sign a contract right now, they've
Right.
got that type of personality where they need somebody face to face to close them. We're going to send somebody out for sure on that. But to scale with speed, man, you have to be in a position really where you're able to close over the phone. You just can't cover enough ground running to appointments all the time. In terms of
Love it.
markets, for a long time, I was only in one market or 6 local markets.
Right.
Back in 2018, we ended up jumping to another market, another 6 cities here in Virginia. That went really well. And then what we ended up doing is back in 2020, just kind of taking a look at things. And, we talked pre-show a little bit about hedge funds, right? Hedge funds kind of
Mhm.
came and were really available to a lot of people. So then we started adjusting the business. to back into the markets where we saw that some of the hedge funds were in. And so my preference of market wasn't, small city, wasn't a major city. We found best success in like my original two markets. Our original home market was finding markets that had population sizes of 200,000 and 350,000 people, where we had hedge fund buyers located. We found, man, that we could absolutely crank deals in those markets, and that there was an abundance of cash buyers there, but a lot of people weren't going there. So like the Memphis, Tennessees, and the Chattanoogas, and the Birminghams, and Little Rocks, and all these smaller cities, there's a lot of business to be done there that a lot of people, I think, don't realize. But again, population size, man, 200, 350,000, you can really get active and make some money.
Love it. Love it. I mean, last thing on this piece of the operation is, how have you guys shifted, based on the current market conditions? Have you done
Yeah.
anything differently with your marketing and your overall strategy?
Yeah, I love that, man. So, about 2 years ago, so I decided to shift extremely early. All right, and the
Nice.
reason the reason for me for that was that I had rode a nice wave, right? You got to remember, I started back in
Right.
2000, so I had rode a really really nice wave for a long time, and
Mhm.
I'll never forget the moment. I had a house that I was selling for 450,000 that I had built. All right, where 8 years prior, that exact same house would have been an $180,000 house. Okay. And so for me, and that the first house I built in that neighborhood sold for 185,000. Now I'm selling one for 450,000. This is back a couple years ago. And I'm saying to myself, like, I'm not saying it's ending today, but it's
Mhm.
gotta be at some point, right? Like, how much
Right.
more is somebody going to pay for a house in this neighborhood? Because I think people have to understand how the ecosystem functions, all right? Because what happens in a bull market when things are really pressing hard is that if there's 10 people renovating houses in one neighborhood, guess what? How that works. Every time somebody lists a new renovation, they're increasing the price point.
Mhm.
So if Brandon just finished a renovation and he sold his for 300,000, guess what I'm doing? I'm not renovating a house now to try to sell it for 300,000. I'm going for
Right.
310. I'm going for
Right.
315. This is how markets start to push, right?
Right.
This is
Right.
how you get from 185 to 450. It's
Mhm.
just these small increments over each listing. And so I started realizing that it has to cap at some point.
Mhm.
And so how I looked at it, man, was pretty simple. All right. And a lot of people are doing these types of deals now, but I said, wait a second. I'll never forget this, man. I had a house because I was having cash flow problems. All right. This is
Mhm.
in 2017. I had overhead a month of 200,000.
Oof.
Now this is before I could even pay myself, bro. So we're doing a lot of projects. All right.
Right.
I needed to create some cash fast. So I go to sell one of the houses that I had been sitting on that we hadn't gotten to renovating yet,
Mhm.
right? Because they used to call me a house addict, man. If you had a house for sale, it made sense, I'd buy it, right?
Yeah.
I might not be able to work on it for a whole year, but I'd buy it, right? So I sell this house off to make some cash. We hadn't touched it. I make 25,000. Okay.
Mhm.
So I talked to the realtor and I said, why did y'all buy that house instead of waiting for it to be renovated? And he said, man, my folks can't afford to pay the price for the neighborhood. They want to be in the neighborhood.
Mm.
They felt like it was in livable condition. They could make some of the repairs themselves. So they wanted to move forward. So I'm like, oh, wait. So there's this whole segment of people out here that are not looking for a renovated house.
Mm.
They're just looking to be able to get in the neighborhood. They want to be able to get
Yeah.
their kid in a good school district,
Yeah.
right? And we often talk so much about cash buyer this, cash buyer that. I started realizing that the real actual money was with retail buyers.
Mm.
And so think about that concept for a second. See, when a cash buyer purchases a piece of property, right, they have to buy it. There has to be margin available.
Right.
There has to be equity available because that's the only way they're going to actually purchase it. Well, how does a retail transaction function in real estate? When it comes to retail, people always pay whatever the current market price is at that time for that asset.
Right.
So if today the house is worth 200,000, that's what people are looking to pay for it, $200,000 today. They're not worried about having to have margin for equity and things of that nature. So when I started to realize that a couple of years back, I realized that, oh wait, like there's an entire business opportunity here, and now we call it wholesaling, right?
Mm.
And so what we started doing was started buying a lot of these properties, putting them in livable condition, not making it the Taj Mahal where somebody could lick off the floor and stainless steel and gray and white cabinets. I've done all of that,
Yeah.
done it 100 times over,
Right.
right? We just started looking at real estate as assets where we could take them and create margin.
Love it.
Okay, well, if we have a direct to seller operation, this person wants to sell me this house for 150,000. Okay, well, in livable condition, they're selling for, let's just say 200,000. Maybe full renovations are selling for 235,000.
Mhm.
So what we started to do was pick them up for 150, get them in livable condition, and then sell them for the 200,000, make 50. Because what we started to realize it, if we fully renovated it, go through the debt, deal with the contractors, do all those things, permits, da 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 da, you're still going to end up only making 50 grand, but you're really going to end up doing more work.
Right.
So we kind of started to manage the real estate in that way and create a lot of spread because everybody has these deals. They just don't realize they're deals.
Mm.
So when you get that lead that the house is livable, but it's dated, right? I'm from the South, Brandon, like you, right? So I'm from the South. I'm from South Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, when I was growing up, rest in peace, my grandmother. When I was growing up, I went to my grandma's house. She had plastic on the furniture,
Right.
right?
Right.
Her house, right? Until she passed, her house looked the same the whole time. Same paint, same carpet, same appliances, same cabinets, same countertops, but it was livable though.
Mm.
It was livable, right? So we get a lot of these leads that come in and people will say, oh, the seller wants too much. They think the house is worth more than it is and da 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 da. No, it's just worth what it's worth right now. You just got to create some spread on that. So those were the types of deals, man, that I started doing a couple of years ago in terms of wholesaling, where I started partnering with people on my flips, stopped committing my time there. I started looking for more wholesale opportunities. And a lot of these leads that we had that we were usually just kind of throwing out because they didn't fit for cash buyers, I then started taking a lot of those down, putting those on the market. And just to be really honest, in the last 2 years, that's been my primary revenue source
Love it.
in my business. I make more money doing that than I make wholesaling.
Love it.
It comes from wholesale marketing,
Mm.
but we're able to create such great spread because, again, the buyer doesn't need equity. They're willing to pay whatever it's worth today.
Love it.
And so we've done really, really well with that over the years.
That's dope. Last thing on that is, have you changed anything as far as sourcing the deals, as far as the marketing goes, to adjust versus like what's going on right now?
Yeah, so what we're doing on the front end of the transactions right now is we're trying to get things as close to 50% of ARV as possible. One thing, and that sounds crazy saying out loud because generally we're buying at 70%, right? But one thing that we did is we got on the horn a couple of weeks ago because the market's been in flux for a couple of weeks,
Right.
right? Like a couple of weeks ago, I got on the horn with every lender I knew,
Mm.
all right, personally had a relationship with. And I called these lenders and I said, hey, how are you looking at things right now? What is your perspective on the business right now? Right. And a lot of them are in this pause phase. They don't know what they can lend right now. They don't know what they want to lend rather right now. And so what we've started trying to account for, and this becomes really difficult, and I think this is important to explain, we're now pushing to try to get as close to 50% of ARV as possible. But if you look at the math of a deal, that's pretty low. Right. That's pretty low in terms of a price. So it's really difficult to achieve. So I think what people have to really understand is we're at a point where business is going to slow for everybody. Doesn't mean business is going to end, but business is going to slow right now. That doesn't mean wholesaling doesn't still work. That doesn't mean you can't sell deals to buyers and this, that, and the third. What it actually means, all right, is there's this saying, in crypto, rest in peace in my crypto portfolio. There's this saying, all right, in crypto, where you buy the rumor, you sell the news, right?
Like that.
So for the past couple of months, yes, in our space, in our circles, there's been talk about the market, what's going to happen. We've been talking about that for years.
Right.
Well, mainstream America, who watches, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, they weren't hearing that for the past couple of years. They were hearing about how if you put a house on the market, it had 20 different offers.
Right.
So there was no perspective from a seller that the market was going to reduce, that the price they could get for a home was starting to reduce. So we're in that phase right now where it's just starting to become news. So what does that mean when somebody gets unsettling news? Sometimes it takes a little bit for it to sink in.
Yeah.
Imagine having held out on selling your house for the last 10 years. We all know that seller. Like, I'm waiting to sell until I can
Right.
get the right price.
Right.
And, I know you're offering me 150,000, but I need 225.
Right.
We all know that seller.
Mhm.
He's freaking out right now. Right? He's freaking out right now. He's not going to sign a contract right now. But guess what?
He's right.
He's getting ready to feel enough pressure in the future where he will have no choice but to sell.
Mm.
Because now he'll start seeing the news, right?
Right.
It's no longer a rumor. Now it's the news. Now the price of the real estate he's seeing, when people start getting those next assessments and the assessment value starts to drop,
Mm.
that's going to be a mental trigger for a lot of people. That's going to be, because we've been in this market, Brandon, for the past couple of years. You call a seller and the seller's like, I want a tax assessed value. Well, a lot of times that might be 20, 30, 40,000 more than what you can pay,
Right.
right?
Right.
What starts to happen when these assessments now start to come in and then they start to reduce? So we're in this kind of weird bubble right now where it's like a pause period, right? Like, sellers need to catch up to what's happening. Once they start to catch up to what's happening, as some of the economic effects start to take place. We're looking at inflation, we're looking at gas, we're looking at cost of goods and services. Those things are starting to shift. More opportunities will become available, because at the very end of the day, I think what we all have to understand is that the crisis, so to speak, or recession that we're in is fueled in many ways by aggressive debt usage by us as consumers over the last couple of years, right? So
Right.
salaries have not increased greatly, right? Salaries haven't increased greatly. I remember when I was making $15 an hour, I got like an extra 25 cents a year, right? So
Crazy.
salaries aren't going up.
Right.
So what's happening is you got people that took on an abundance of credit card debt, auto debt, student loan debt, medical debt, all different types of debt because they could afford it at that time.
Mm.
What we're starting to see now, unfortunately, is due to inflation, due to cost of goods and services going up. What does that then mean? That means every business owner has to increase cost.
Yeah.
So that means the essentials, right? Like the basics are now all more expensive. So the money you used to have, that extra $300 a month you used to have to pay your minimum credit card payment, well, now you don't have that because now that money has to be reallocated to basic necessities. So we're just in this period right now where the market is shifting in real time, and there's going to be some patience required from us as wholesalers and fix and flippers and buy and hold folks. Like, imagine being a burr investor right now, right? Where we've got to sit tight for a little bit, could be a couple of months, and we got to really kind of see what happens. The last time we really experienced this was when COVID first hit.
Right.
I remember the conversation for me and all my friends at the time at the end of March. We were freaking out. Are people going to pay rent on April 1st or
Mm.
not?
Mm.
Right? Like, literally freaking out.
Yeah.
And then there was lenders paused lending, right? Lenders didn't want to fund any loans and things were happening at that time. And that took a couple of months to kind of work its way out. And I think that's where we're at right now, man. Everything's just letting everything settle at the bottom of the ocean. Everybody's trying to figure out what's taking place, to kind of figure out what's the right approach to kind of really get into this thing.
Love it. Love it. Bro, I think you got another career as an economist. You got some good insights
No
though.
doubt.
What's one of the places that you're kind of gathering your knowledge kind of just to continue to be kind of ahead of the curve? Because you mentioned that earlier. I just wanted to ask that question.
Yeah, man. So, man, that's a really great question, actually, that you asked me that. All right. So, I've been doing this since almost since I started. I want to say probably, I know for sure, at least 2009 or 2010. I got a very simple kind of standard practice on how I stay up to speed on what's happening. So, in any market I do business on a daily basis, I want to take a look at active, pending, and sold on a daily
Mm.
basis. What that allows me to do, it gives me an opportunity to be up to speed on exactly what's happening in a market in real time. All right. How are prices adjusting in the neighborhood? Are they going up? Are they going down? What do days on market look like? What does the product that people are selling look like? It helps me start to figure out those types of things. The other piece of what I do is on a daily basis. All right. And I'll never forget this, man. Like, even though I didn't have mentoring, I had people that gave me
Yeah.
information. A guy told me one time, he said, man, you should always read the paper every day.
Mm.
Every day you should read the paper. And he said, that doesn't mean you got to go read every article.
Right.
He says, but you should always, at minimum, read the headline and read the first paragraph.
Mm,
And he said, especially in the business section and the economy
mm,
section. Right? And so I started practicing that back in 2009, 2010. So every day I'm looking at the Washington Post, I'm looking at the New York Times, I'm looking at my local papers, I'm looking at the LA Times, and every once in a while I look at the Miami Herald.
mm.
Now, why do I do that? All right. I'm doing that. It takes a little bit of time in my morning routine, but I'm doing that because these are how these cycles really push, right? Like the large cities are going to take the
Right.
impacts first, right? That's where the population is really kind of congregated. That's going to take the hit first. So I want to know what's happening in these places now because whatever is happening there is going to happen here. It's just a simple matter of time, right? And so you can end up starting to be ahead of things by anticipating, by looking at what's taking place in larger scale markets. So that's something I started doing a couple of years ago. Like I said, man, and it's been transformative because I'm always up to speed. And the other thing also with that, it's impeccable when it comes to
Mm,
networking because now you're in a position where if you're at a networking function, a networking event, I'll use myself as an example, right? Like I'm in a city where not everybody in my level of business, when it comes to single
mm.
family, looks like me. So I'm going and having a lot of conversations with people that I might not even be necessarily welcome,
Yeah.
not welcome, but like I don't know everything about what they're talking about. But here's the thing though, if I've read the paper and I've read all the headlines and I read all the first paragraphs, I can at least tap into the
Love that.
conversation. I may not be making a point. I may not be, the smartest guy in the circle, but I'm allowed in because I've got an opinion. It might just be an opinion from that first paragraph, but I've got
Yeah.
but I've got an opinion, right? So now I'm in the conversation. Now I build the relationship. Now I can kind of nurture and do something with that, man. But that's how I'm staying up to speed, man, over the years. That's how I'm paying attention to what's taking place and making sure that I'm pivoting right, man. Like just anticipating what could come.
Man, I love that. So many gems, and I think that's gonna help a lot of people, be able to start to up their game. Because I think it's super important that you brought that up, bro. And look, I know I've had you for a minute, and this has been a great episode, but I want to make sure I get you out on time. But I can't let you go without putting you through the lightning round. You ready for that?
Yeah, 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 for sure, man. Let's
Let's
do it.
do it. So I got a set of questions for you. You don't know the question. I don't know the answer. So just say the first thing that comes to your mind. What's one book that's been instrumental to your growth as a real estate investor?
Man, 48 Laws of Power.
Love that.
I'm not gonna hit you with the Rich Dad Poor
Thank you.
Dad or Think and Grow
Thank
Rich,
you. Thank you. Get a
all of
folks
that.
something else to read.
Um, I'm gonna be real. 48 Laws of Power is one of the most critical books I've ever read or studied. Um, 48 Laws of Power is a book that can be used for good or
hmm
evil, um, but it's a book on how things work. Not an opinion on how things work, but just on how human nature functions and how you can manage human nature to your benefit. So in business, that book, I read that book when I was younger and over the years, man, that book has helped me tremendously, man, when it comes to business for sure.
Love that. Love that. If you could have drinks or coffee with any one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Man, first thing that comes to mind is Kobe Bryant, man. I'm a huge Kobe
Oh
fan.
man. R.I.P.
Um, Rest in
I
peace.
love
I'm a
that.
huge Kobe fan. Cried when he passed, man. Like that's my guy. The reason I would want to sit down with him is because I identify with a lot of how he went about his business. And what I mean
Mm,
by that, even almost to his own detriment, mine too. I've almost sacrificed everything for what I believe in terms of business, right? In terms of this dream that I've had. I was
mm,
talking to somebody about this last week. It's like, Kobe talks about watching his dad be in the league and growing up overseas and, just being dedicated to this dream of being in the NBA, just giving it everything that he's got. I knew I wanted to be in business, in real estate when I was really young.
yeah.
Far back as I can remember, wanted to do that was in my early years of high school. And so for me, part of walking that and watching him over the years is he didn't get too distracted. Yeah, he raps sometimes, or he might have popped up in a movie here and there, but really,
Right.
he was just all in on the sport. He was
Mm.
all in on the execution of the sport. He was all in on the execution of getting better, increasing his skill set. And so I identify a lot with that. It was unfortunate when he passed because he was just really starting to get to that point where he retired and he was finally getting a chance to let that go, that dream go that he had achieved greatness in, and apply that same level of intensity and energy to something new. So it was unfortunate, man. We never got to see that from him, but I'm sure whatever
He
it
was
would have
already
been,
crushing it.
it would have been phenomenal, man. But that's who I'd want to sit down with, man, and just get that energy from him. The way he operated.
Yeah, love it, love it. What's the best advice you would give someone looking to do their very first deal wholesaling?
Yeah, don't overcomplicate it, right? Like wholesaling at its core is really simple to execute. What are we doing? We're looking for somebody that's looking to sell a house for X amount of dollars, where we can then sell it to somebody else for X amount of dollars. Not
Hmm.
complicated, right?
Right.
Simple advice: go pull a list in a quality location, not necessarily where you live, but wherever a quality location where business is taking place at. Get a quality script, skip trace that list, and then
Mhm.
simply just get on the phone and
Love it.
talk to people without any expectation of making money.
Mm,
Talk to people without
that's a
any
gem.
expectation of closing a deal, without any expectation of making an assignment fee or getting your first check or this, that, and the third. Just get on the phone and start having conversations with people and figure out how you can be of service and help them for whatever they got going on, whatever
Love it.
distress they
Love it.
might be feeling at this time, how you can help them, man. That's where I would go with it for sure.
Dope, dope. What's one mistake that you've made on a deal or in business in general that, if you had a chance to do it differently, you would take that chance?
Man, there's been a couple of different mistakes that I've made over the years. I think the
You kind of
biggest one
already
for
talked
me,
about a big one, right? Getting
yeah,
out of wholesaling and starting to
man,
rehab. That was huge. But you got something
yeah,
else for
that
us?
was yeah, that was a mistake, man. I wish I had never stopped wholesaling. I left so much money on the table doing that. But
Right.
more importantly than that, that's a big one for me. But biggest mistake in business by far was not creating passive income early enough.
Mm,
I started making money when I was really, really young, in my early 20s. Started making money in real estate. And at that time, the concept of taking $40,000 versus $400 a month uh, did not resonate with me in any way. All right.
right.
Um,
Right.
just give me the 40,000, right? Like
Mhm.
400 a month. Like, what am I going to do with that? And
Mhm.
so that was a gross kind of mistake on my part for sure. Because you got to remember, like I said earlier, man, I got in 2008, 2009, 2010. I'm buying property.
Bro,
Man, the
pennies on
type
a
of
dollar.
properties, man, I listen, there's neighborhoods where I was wholesaling at where the properties were selling at that time for 25,000, as is gut renovation 25,000. Same house today, 270,000.
Mm,
Full gut renovation, same exact house. You could have just bought it 10 years ago for 25,000 and sat on it and made money.
right.
So I
Right.
I I grossly miscalculated that. And that's why I'm so adamant these days when I hear people talking about, oh, I'm wholesaling, I want to flip a house. It's like, no, you don't. You don't
Right.
understand how this business works. Like, you don't know
Yeah.
enough to know. You have active income and passive income. You need to look at real estate and determine how can I create active income that I can then pour into passive income. Because, I had a lot of energy when I was in my early 20s. I had a lot of gas. I could go to sleep at 3 a.m. and be up at 6 and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And we would always hear this when we were younger, Brandon. They'd be like, man, when you get older, man, it ain't this.
Mm,
It's really true, man. You start moving just a tad bit slower, as you get older. And you don't want to run around all the time. You don't want to have that anxiety once you have a family and children and
mhm,
different things
mhm.
of where's my next deal coming from? What happens if
Right.
I don't have a closing, if this marketing doesn't work? So that was a mistake, man. If I could get that one back, man, I'd grab it back for sure.
Love it. Love it. Bro, what's the financial goal that you set for your team for this calendar year?
Yeah, man. So simple, man. It's $300,000 a month. So
Love it.
across a couple of different businesses that I have, and so how I work now is that I have an online business, right? And I've got, a real estate business. I cross my team inside of each opportunity. I don't want them to feel like, hey, he went online, created this digital business, he's making a bunch of money doing that. I want them to be able to feel that also, right? And so between both of those businesses, I want those to be driving around $300,000 per month consistently, based on how I pay out my team. Man, that'll be very beneficial for them, and it'll allow me to walk and go home on a monthly basis, with the dollar amount that I've always, kind of had as a benchmark. And so that's kind of my goal, man. It's like, I've had a lot of people on my team over the years. One, if you're not a real estate,
Yep.
but try to pay them as best you can, and have transparency in your books. That's one thing I had to learn, that everybody doesn't have the education as far as the cost of taxes, the cost of insurance, and
Mm,
all these different things, the gas bills, the light bills it takes to even flip a house. Some people just see you bought it for 150, sold it for 200. So creating transparency inside of your organization,
right.
for me, man, has been really pivotal for sure.
I love that. Bro, if you woke up tomorrow and you had $500 million deposited into your account overnight, what's the first thing you would go out and purchase with that newfound money?
The first thing I go, man, I know exactly what I would go buy, actually, man. Now that you ask, the very first thing I would go buy, because 500 M's, that's heavy. That's a heavy bag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I would be in Florida, all right, Fort Lauderdale area specifically. I'd be looking for a house right on the water. So not the channel, because
Mhm.
now 500 million, it's not channel money. I gotta be on the ocean.
Yeah.
All right. I want to be on the ocean, probably one of those $50 million houses. All right. I'm gonna be cooled out with a beautiful view, nice boat, and having a good time, man.
Love it. Love it. Bro, last one for you. For that person that's out there right now that's struggling or maybe hasn't gotten started, just can't figure it out, what advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, man. Like if you're just getting started, you haven't had an opportunity to really make any money. Maybe you're like me, where it took me 2 years to do my first deal. You're in that process and just nothing's sticking. It's not working. Don't do it how I did it, right? Like School of hard knocks, man. Like I didn't have a mentor, didn't have a coach. I just had to go out, make mistakes, and learn from them. Now,
Mhm.
thankfully, the market was hot for a long time, so I was able to absorb a lot of those mistakes. But we don't know if it's always going to be that friendly. I tell everybody, man, and it doesn't have to be me. I've coached thousands of people, worked with tons of different students, helped people do deals, but go get a quality coach. It could be anybody that you trust, that shows you they actually do what they're teaching you. Get a quality coach, find the money to pay for that. Because it's like when people ask me, man, all the time, I speak at different events, do content online, webinars, different things. And people say all the time, hey, why should I join your program? Right.
Mm,
And I'm like, listen, like that's your decision, right? You figure out if it makes sense
right.
to join my program or not, right? My program is not catered to any one individual, right? I've got hundreds and hundreds of students, right? So you look at my program and determine if it makes good sense for you. But this is what my program is. What my program is the GPS, right?
Mm.
So I'm in Virginia. I'm not telling you that you can't get to LA by car with a paper map, right? All right. I'm 36. So when I was a good kid, they had the paper map at the gas station, Brandon. You had to get
Yeah.
back in the car
Yeah.
to unfold it and just look at the
Uh-huh.
roads, and all the information was there to get where you wanted to go.
Right.
But you had to figure that thing out. You might get 10, 20 miles down the road and realize you went the wrong way, right? You
Mhm.
join Charged Up, you get in a GPS system. You take a wrong
Love it.
left, we telling you how to get back on track. You need to know where a gas
Love it.
station at, we telling you where the gas station at. You need to get food, we telling you where the food is at. Because you have to be that intentional about your learning, because time is always of the essence. Imagine thinking you don't need a coach, that you don't need mentorship, right? And then now it's 2022 and the market's shifting. But you've been on YouTube University for the past year. Imagine how much money you've lost, how much money you've
Right.
missed that you might not ever be able to make again, because that play could have changed. All the hedge funds are saying, what, Brandon? Hey, we're changing our terms.
Oh,
We're doing this. Maybe we're pulling
exactly.
out. Maybe we're buying less margin. Well, they weren't saying that a year ago. They weren't saying that 2 years ago. If you had a GPS, you could get there right away and capture the opportunity. Well, if you're just
Love it.
getting there now, what do you do? Right?
Mm.
So go out, hire a coach, go out, hire a mentor, get yourself a GPS system so you can start making money.
Yeah, bro. That is the best answer, man. And I appreciate you, man, especially being here, all the value that you gave from, just really, I think breaking down that whole perspective of making sure that you're not trading active income for passive. Some of your morning routine, some of the things that you've done to stay ahead of the curve is going to be super, super helpful, bro. But I want to make sure that folks know how to follow you, and where they can find out more about the you and everything that you got going on.
Yeah, for sure, man. Look, if you're interested in hearing about my program, becoming a student, seeing if it is even a right fit for you, hit me on IG at the Chris Jefferson. Shoot me a DM with the word coaching. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Or go to startflippingdeals.com and check out our website, man. But make sure to tap in with me and shoot me a message for sure.
Love it. Love it. Guys, and as always, I definitely want to continue to bring great, valuable information like this. There's, handouts, coaching. We're kind of compiling a bunch of stuff over at the Similar Offers website. So if you head over to similaraoffers.com, you could join the wait list for the coaching or continue to receive some of this information right to your inbox. So head over to Similar Offers for that info. Chris, it's been great, bro. I appreciate you. It's always good chatting with you. I always feel like I learned something, man. So thanks for
No
putting me
doubt.
on game, man.
Hey, bless, man. It's always good to see you, man. It's always good to tap in. Since we first met, I think we met when I was speaking at Max Maxwell's event right back in 2020, man. Just like what you're doing, like what you're about. I like how you're getting information out there and helping people, man. So, anytime I can do something with you and support, man, that's how we getting down.
Bro, I appreciate it. Always. Salute, man. Hey, as I
All right, brother.
always say, similar offers, do more deals. Till next time. Peace.
That's all for this episode of the Send More Offers Real Estate Show with Brandon Barnes. But we know you're craving more knowledge to get yourself ready for that next deal. To schedule a call with Brandon to learn more about how to do deals consistently without seller appointments in a repeatable way, be sure to visit us at sendmoreoffers.com. And be sure to tune in for the next episode of the Send More Offers Real Estate Show.